Hey guys, Garrett with TEQSPORT here, and today we're showcasing and installing our 5th gen 4Runner rock sliders. Our rock sliders are featured to be quite stylish on the side of your truck. They feature double gussets on each of the main members, so they're very strong, and they have dimple dies all up and down the main traction pad so that you don't slip when you're getting in and out of your vehicle. We have our sliders featured in 5 degree here on the table, but we're also offering a 20 degree if you want that little bit of extra clearance when you're on the trails. Things we're going to need for our install are a 13mm flat wrench, some sort of pry tool, and preferably an electric socket. We're also going to need, if you're working by yourself, a rolling floor jack to help you get these installed, or if you have a good friend, have them help you out. So we're going to start out by removing these plastic plugs along the frame rail in order to get a flush fit whenever we install our sliders. There's also one bolt you need to remove that holds on the bracket for the emergency brake line. We're going to start by removing all of these plastic plugs in the side of the frame rail. We have to remove these because they block the slider from mating flush to the body of the frame. You can see one that we have in the rear here that's still existing. We don't need to remove this far back one, but we do need to remove the ones all the way from front to back here. These can kind of be a trick to get out of the frame without breaking them. However, you're basically just going to want to take a plastic pry bar or a screwdriver and wedge under the edge of these until you're able to remove them. Once you've got all the plugs removed, we're going to take our socket and remove the bolt holding the emergency brake line. Now that we've got that bolt out, we can flex this plate up and out of the way so that it's easier to install our sliders. I would recommend, if you have any dirt, cleaning off of the excess dirt so you can get a nice flush mate with the frame rail. So we're just going to go ahead and wipe this down and move on to the next part. So if you're working by yourself, you're probably going to want to pre-install your washers onto all of your bolts and set about 4 to 5 in the front. On the passenger side, the front mounting plate only has 4 bolts, and on the driver it has 5. So once you've got those washers on, we're ready to move on to the next step. Here's where you're going to need a friend or a rolling jack. So I've found, if you're working by yourself, that using a rolling jack, while still a little precarious, can be a bit easier than trying to manhandle this yourself up onto the truck. You're going to first want to find the balance point of the slider, which conveniently is about this center post, and you're just going to want to set that on the circular pad on the jack so that it doesn't feel too rocky and it stays on the pad nicely. Next, you're going to want to roll this up to the frame rail, and you're going to want to get this about as close to flush with the rail as possible before you start jacking it up so that you don't start interacting with the emergency brake line. So the goal is to get at least one of the bolts lined up so that you can start it in the front and the back and then remove the jack so that you're able to get the rest of the bolts in. You just want to get them into the threads with enough engagement so that they have some strength. You're not cross-threading them, and you're able to put a wrench on it later. We don't want to tighten these up fully because we're going to have to adjust this at the end. Since we're not installing this for the first time, these bolts are going right in. However, you might feel some sort of grasp or issues where the powder coat on the frame might be interfering with how your bolt feels. Just be careful not to cross-thread anything. Our emergency brake line comes pretty close to our gusset here. So if you need to or you want to, you're able to bend this bracket up a bit to allow for a little bit more clearance for the brake line. Additionally, you're just going to want to take our bracket we undid at the very beginning. You're going to want to spin that down into place on the line, making sure you're not putting a bunch of extra tension. And you're just going to want to line that up with your hole, and then this tab is going to go into our secondary locating hole here. This can be a bit of a trick because it feels like a spring when you're putting this bolt in, but just have patience and you'll get it eventually. Now that we have all of the bolts in, we're ready to start tightening these bolts down and get the slider positioned level. Once we have all our bolts in place and our sliders look nice and level, we can go ahead and work across the side of the frame rail to tighten all of these bolts down. Now that all of our bolts are snug with the socket, we're able to remove our jack. Now that we have our sliders nice and level and where we want them, we've snugged them down with the socket, we're able to go back with our fixed wrenches and finish tightening up all these bolts by hand, making sure they're firm but not too tight, because there is a risk that you could break the weld nut on the back of the frame by over torquing them. Once you've done one pass of tightening all your bolts, I would go over and do a full second pass over each bolt, kind of in a crisscross pattern like you would on a wheel, so that you make sure everything is equally torqued down and there's no awkward loose spots or uneven tension. And that's it. That's pretty much all you have to do on both sides of the truck. You can see our rock sliders look nice and stylish here on our 4Runner, and we're ready to move to the other side to get the finished product. So you can see we've done everything we did on the passenger side, on the driver's side as well. We've removed all of the plugs, taken out the emergency brake line bracket, pushed it up out of the way, slid our jack up, and put our rock slider up against the frame. We've started to tighten down some bolts, and we've just got a few more to go. So we're almost finished. So that completes the install of our 5th Gen 4Runner 5-degree rock sliders. Feel free to reach out to our amazing customer service team if you have any further questions about your installation, or refer to our install manual online at TEQSPORT.com. You can also check out our extensive list of Toyota and 4Runner products on our website, as well as our in-house TEQSPORT products featured online at TEQSPORT.com.